We have a quorum, so we are going to call this meeting to order. You have your agenda and packets before you. We have the minutes of December 18th meeting that were in the packet. Did everyone have a chance to review those? And if so, do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve? Or
We have
second?
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. So we have three applications this morning. We're going to start with the application from DH Ventures LLC. So it's three locations, 508, 510, 512 on Broadway North. Thank you, Megan.
Good morning, Chair and Renaissance Zone Authority. So this application is for a rehabilitation project on Broadway. So it's at 510, 510, 512 Broadway. So just for some context, we've got Broadway on the west here, Robert Street on, Broadway on the east, Robert Street on the west. We've got the railroad tracks here, and it's just nearby Cowboy Jack's on the south. So this application for the rehab, their intent is to rehab the whole interior of the building and the exterior of the building, and also making changes to the facade, including to that rear that I'll talk about a little bit more, that kind of looks like the back of house today. The current building value is $269,000 about, and then the proposed investment is $350,000. So this equates to about $75 per square foot. And so our minimum threshold is $40 per square foot, and also 50% of the full and true value of the building. So they're meeting both of those. Using estimated tax information and the current mill levy and estimated property values, today they're paying about $4,000 in taxes and would increase to about $9,200 annually. So up on your screen, you can see what the building looks like today. And the upper left is the view from Broadway looking towards the building, and then the lower right is that view from Robert Street. So you can kind of see the wall, though they have a mural, but kind of that blank wall. I've got the dumpster kind of in the rear. Here's the floor plan, and so they're proposing to add several spaces. I'm not sure. I think there's only a handful of spaces right now in the building, but there would be 5 lease spaces in the future. And an elevation, so this would be along Broadway, so you can kind of see comparatively to the Upper West that changed primarily to that facade material. Transparency glass would remain about the same, and then more significant change here on the west side of Robert Street. So you can see those, the more transparency and those 2 lease spaces that are proposed. So with that, our applicant doesn't appear to be here today, but with that, staff's recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I like the idea of improving that facade. Any questions or comments from Commissioner?
Madam Chair,
Pipkin?
can I ask a question about, and maybe you can't, but right now it looks like it's going to be brick on the front of that. So do we have a requirement for the materials, or is that up to the owner of the property? And obviously the windows, that's going to be a change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So this project would still need to meet the DMU downtown mixed use zoning requirements. And so as far as I'm aware, they haven't applied yet for a building permit, but that's something that we would look at. So there is minimum transparency requirements as well as material requirements. And brick is just one of those materials that are an option, but is a big material that we see a lot in the downtown just due to its longevity.
Can I just ask a follow-up? So right now it looks like there's like some steel, and so to me, from my perception, I mean, I'm no expert, but it looks like a lot nicer finishes than what is there now. Those are like from the 50s maybe, and that looks like an improvement from the perspective of tying in with some of the other buildings that are close by that are also brick.
Absolutely. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, do we have a motion for approval or denial?
Move to approve?
We have a motion for approval from Dr. Bashani. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Pipcorn. Any other discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Pipcorn?
Aye.
Maddow?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Bershani?
Aye.
Matter?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Mahoney, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to hear your voice. we will include you in that next roll call vote. Thank you for that. Second on the agenda is an application from Cask Lake Community Land Trust, and that's at 717 3rd Avenue North. I did drive by a couple of these, so go ahead.
Morning, Luke Mormon with the Planning Department, here to present item 3 on your agenda. This is, as you stated, the Cask Lake Community Land Trust applied for a Renaissance Zone project for a rehabilitation and new construction project at 717 3rd Avenue North. The applicant's proposing to renovate the interior and exterior of the existing building and add an addition with the basement to the rear. The current building value is $34,500. The proposed rehab investment, since it's kind of a two-parter of projects, the rehab portion investment is $100,000, which equates to approximately $160 per square foot, exceeding the minimum of $40 per square foot. And then the new construction portion is about $250,000, which equates to $350 per square foot, which exceeds the minimum of 100 square foot or 100 per square foot. Using the current mill levy and estimated property value, building taxes would increase from $500 to $4,400 annually. Looking left to right on the screen for the site images. On the left, we're seeing the front facade along facing 3rd Avenue. It's kind of in between buildings, but that would be the front facade, which is on the south. And then in the middle, we're looking at the east elevation, which is along the alley. And then on the right-hand side, we're looking at the rear facade, not facing 3rd Avenue North, that's a typo, but that would be on the rear, the north side of the building. Then here's the site plan. On the left hand, we're looking at the existing and demolition and relocation for the building. It's being moved, I believe, about 12 feet to the east. And so on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the new site plan, which shows the larger footprint of both the existing structure and the addition altogether. And then if you follow my cursor on screen, this is just a handicap accessible ramp here with along the sidewalk that they're adding. Here's the main level floor plan. You can see just to clarify, this is the existing on the right-hand side, and then the addition will be on the left-hand side. And there's also a mezzanine, so kind of a partial second floor above the addition, and then the basement that they're adding would encompass the whole footprint. For the elevations, this is the south elevation facing 3rd Avenue North, and then the east elevation, which would be from the alley. And then this one shows west elevation, which is fronting the houses next to it. And then the north elevation, which is on the rear of the building. Staff is recommending approval as noted on the screen and in your staff report. And the applicant is here to answer any questions. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Pepcorn, I bet you have one.
Madam Chair, I have lots of comments and questions. First of all, Commissioner Grinberg, I think you were on the commission as well. This has been kind of an issue for a long time, and it's a treasure. It's a historic building, and we've kind of had lots of trials and tribulations with trying to get it redone, because it's one of the most unique buildings in our downtown. It's a pocket house, and so I'm so pleased. I could go on, but I won't, because but I will say this is fantastic, and it's actually going to be used. It's been a state of deterioration for decades, and so I'm just so happy. And then it's the Community Land Trust. It's a great combination, and then it's going to actually be in use. My question is, so it's historic, so are they going to have to follow certain building plans and things like that to keep the historic part of the building? And it looks like they're adding on to it. So that's my concern, because if you look at the back of the building, it's been destroyed. And so they couldn't really rebuild that even if they wanted to. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so looking at the registry with the state, or the National Register of Historic Places, there is no prohibition to use, maintenance, or alterations to the property unless federal money is being used to fund the project. Then there is some sort of federal or state review But essentially, that's outside of the city's review, or like our department won't look at that specifically. It'd be at a state or federal level there.
Yeah, it definitely is a unique building. Any other questions or comments on it? If none, do we have a motion for approval or denial?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion for approval, second.
Second.
We have a second by Grimberg. Any other comments, questions? If none, roll call vote, please.
Madell,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Brashani,
Aye.
Pipcorn,
Aye.
Mattern.
Aye. Motion carries. Unanimous vote. Next on the agenda is our final application from Lennon Lofts, 214 and 220 6th Avenue North. I think this really ties in with some of the suggestions on the new scoring with blight removal. So, please.
Good morning, Chelsea Leverson with the Planning Department. This application is for a new construction apartment building. It's going to be located at 220 6th Avenue North. For a little bit of context here, we have 2nd Street with the railroad tracks. Just south of the property is River House. The proposed building will provide first floor parking with floors 2 and 3 providing a combined 22 apartment units. The current property value is approximately $88,000, and the proposed investment is approximately $3.4 million. This equates to an investment of $151 per square foot, exceeding the $100 per square foot minimum. Using the current mill levy and estimated property value, building taxes would increase from $3,900 to $42,000 annually. So on your screen are images of the property today. Prior to construction, 2 blighted vacant buildings will be demolished. A fire-damaged 6-unit apartment building at 220 6th Avenue North is on your left, and a duplex at 214 6th Avenue North is on your right. The building will maximize the site's density. You can see on your screen how the complex will fit on the site. This is a rendering of the apartment provided by the applicant. As I said, the first floor will be parking. Floors 2 and 3 will be the apartment units. There will be 16 one-bedroom units and 6 two-bedrooms. The recommendation is on your screen. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicant, Andrew, is here if you have any questions as well. Thank you.
I apologize, Madam
No,
Chair.
that is,
So I guess my question is, so is all the parking going to be on the first level? And then if you can go back to the slide, there's a parking lot behind there. Is that, do you have access to any of that parking, or is that someone else's? If you don't mind asking that, thank you.
Perfectly fine. Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm a managing member for Lennon Lofts LLC. In regards to parking, the parking lot to the south is actually owned by Sanford, but we actually own the property to the east, which was the old Cityside apartment. That's the old name of it. Now we call it 202 Flats. And so that parking lot that you see that's on the alleyway, or that strip of parking, is basically dedicated for overflow for the tenants that will be in this building.
So can I ask, so the number of parking spaces in the building, you have how many there? And then basically then what you're saying is it's for extra parking to the.
Sure. So there's 21 parking stalls inside the structure. And then if it was completely full, and there's 28, there's 28 rooms. So if everyone had a car, that'd be 28 cars, right? So the 7 extra would park on that alley parking. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
And it's first come, first serve. So it'll be very easy for them.
any other questions of Andrew? If there are none, do we have a motion for approval or denial? Mayor, did you have any comments on any of the properties?
Great projects today. I'm really excited, and today's comment, the last one, is fantastic. So these are really good stuff.
Excellent.
Move to approve?
We have a motion by Brashani. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Middow. Any further comments, questions? If none, roll call vote, please.
Brashani,
Aye.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pipcorn,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Madell,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Matter.
Aye. Another unanimous motion carries. All right. We have on the very end of our packet that was sent out to us, and in today's we have modifications to the project staff reports and some comments on the scoring that we've been using. Thank you for the work that you've done in this.
Thank you, Chair. And Megan's is doing the heavy lifting here. I'm just here to just kind of lay the groundwork of, as we recall the last few applications, both at the Renaissance Zone meetings and at the City Commission meetings, we've been hearing, kind of commentary about the scoring as it relates to the projects, and the scoring maybe not really reflecting our true desire for the project or our interest in the project. And there's a tendency to use the scores like grades. And so, a C, 70, 80, B, that doesn't necessarily mean the emotional value or the, kind of policy value of it. So Megan took she had some time to take some leadership in this and explore various options. And so in your packet is a memo to that about redoing the structure of the scoring system. Megan can walk through it. I'll be here to answer any questions. And this is just really a draft to start the conversation. So if this is totally off base and you want us to start over, that's perfectly fine. Or if we want to have a longer conversation in terms of a workshop or anything like that, we're glad to do that as well.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Nicole.
Yep. So as Nicole was saying, we've noticed some few things over the years, probably even if we want to look back to the 2019 development plan, where if you remember, there was 15 overall goals that we kind of picked up the downtown and focus plan 7 goals and kind of placed them in. And so that was kind of one of the things I think we started to see in terms of some of those changes to review and then also scoring. So what we did in kind of review for do an analysis of our staff reports, and again, going back to our development plan and making sure that our staff reports are reflective of everything that's in the development plan to just make that more clear for all the applicants as well as you all reviewing the projects. So there's a couple things I'll kind of talk briefly about each of those bullet points. So if there's any questions at any point, feel free to interrupt me and let me know. So there's a few silent criteria, or at least one silent criteria where we do kind of look at it, but not necessarily as kind of a specific item as far as review. And so that's recommended to be included. So comprehensive improvements and blight removal is something that we do consider and review in our evaluation, but not specifically as kind of a line items being spoken to. There's some redundancy in the scoring, as you've probably, I'm sorry, not the scoring, but the analysis have you seen, where there's different sections that talk about the investment threshold. So one was really kind of more about the state thresholds. The other was really more about the local thresholds. And in some cases, we're kind of repeating some of the information. So recommendation to put those two together. Another recommendation to combine urban design, street activation, and historic preservation sections. That again is something where we were kind of seeming to repeat a lot of similar information multiple times. And so it makes sense to just collectively put that together as one item. Also, recommendation to streamline review of the vision and goals. And so you'll see in the applications as well as in the staff report, each one of those 7 goals are individual, but it's really tough. We know that all projects can't be all things. And so it's really tough in some situations to do an evaluation where, for example, the first project you had for the rehab that you saw, the building is built to the property line. So there's no way to address parking, on site, which is one of those goals in the plan, as a separate item. And so kind of removing the 7 as a whole individually, but looking at them as a whole, we think would be a better way to provide kind of that analysis. And then lastly, to remove that numerical scoring, like Nicole was saying, because those numbers don't always reflect how, good a project is or how much, how valuable that project would be. So then in your memo, there's the current heading and the proposed heading. So that just shows the different items of how you review them in your staff reports today, and then moving forward, if you're supportive of this, or if not, we can make other changes or come back to you as well. But everything that I mentioned today, how those would kind of change, so it would shorten that staff report up a little bit and make it a little bit more streamlined. So, and then just as a final note, we ask applicants to come sit down and talk with us before they submit their application to get a good understanding of what they want to do. We talk through the process, we talk through the goals, we talk through the potential changes that could be made to further implement the goals of the Renaissance Zone Development Plan and the Downtown in Focus Plan. So that is something that we do for every project that maybe doesn't get translated or reflected in what you see. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think you've tied this in nicely with the group we met yesterday in land use and land development. It's a lot more cohesive in the common goals. So thank you for your work. Any questions from the group? Commissioner Grinberg, we ran into some things just for a little historic review here. With the scoring we were using, as she said, not every project could meet all that criteria and should not meet all the criteria. So this, and at first we would be like, ooh, that's really a low score. And I think one of our investors took offense to that when I inadvertently made that comment. So I think this is going to really help it with taking that scoring out of it, so we don't feel like we gave somebody an F and they're coming to us with a good project. So I like the direction you're going here. Is there comments from anyone else? And I'd also like to point out what came to my mind as I went through all these packets. Thank you, everyone, all of you, for all the behind the scenes work you do, meeting with the applicants prior, going through this process. It doesn't just happen. You're the silent people behind the scenes, and you do so much good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One, maybe just to add to that comment related to the scoring, Megan and the staff team did, kind of test this on a sample staff report. If that gives you more comfort, we can send you kind of a dummy staff report on what that would look like, maybe related to a project as we compare, if more discussion is needed or if more examples are needed.
Does anyone feel you need more clarification?
Well, Madam Chair,
Go for it.
I think that would be helpful for me, maybe to bring myself up to date. As I'm hearing this correctly, it's going to be less subjectivity in number ranking versus the new method. And so what would the new method then contain that's more objective? I'm curious on that. And then go back in time, what the origin of the legislature allowed for administrative rule, if I can use that description of us implementing this process. How did the ranking come to be? Was that from day one when it passed, shortly after 1999 and been in place since then?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I think historically, from what we understand, and obviously Jim is here, but our previous predecessor, Bob Stein, and the committee at the time, the commission at the time, used that, kind of created that. And so as a way to communicate about projects. When I talked with Bob and Bob trained me into this position, it was, it was kind of lightly looked at as scoring because at the end of the day, related to it was more about the conversation between the board members and the staff and the applicant. And so I don't want to put words in Bob's mouth, but because he's not here to defend himself, but basically it was somewhat casual in nature. And, but there were, like, as Megan said, like 15 categories. And so when the Downtown in Focus Plan, the Renaissance Zone Authority sat on the advisory committee of the Downtown in Focus Plan. And as we started working on the Downtown in Focus Plan and how to implement the Downtown in Focus Plan, you know, and then the 2019 update, we're like, hey, let's just combine these goals, because we had a series of goals with the Renaissance Zone Plan and a series of goals of the In Focus Plan. And so we try to like combine them. And what we maybe historically over the last year, the conversation we've been having is maybe we overshot a bit. And so as an example, one of the projects where I believe Orange Records and Paradox Commons, the comics, the old Mexican Village, was really, I think, one of the projects that triggered this kind of discussion. And one of the issues is when you look at the Downtown in Focus Plan, so this is a valid conversation, you know, I don't want to like say it's not a valid conversation. The Downtown in Focus Plan, I think in that vision, it's maybe more of a 20, 50-year vision if the market could withstand, you know, demoing that whole lot, that whole building, and building a 4-story, 5-story building with a mixed-use development. And versus the owner of the property wanted to do kind of just a cleanup and retrofit. And so it's about how do we integrate those incremental improvements if an owner wants, like especially for the mom and pop kind of businesses, if an owner wants to use their one and done, you know, again, it's one and done Renaissance Zone tool. And so that was the level of discussion we had. And certainly I can appreciate if this needs more time. We started to have this conversation right as we were doing our recent update. We didn't want to miss the update deadline at the end of the year. And so we made a list of things to work upon over the course of the next 1 to 3 years, if you will. We can do another update whenever we want to. We don't need to wait for the next 5-year plan. But for our communication, we want to make sure we're on the same page of what your goals are, the Renaissance Zone and the In Focus discussion. So hopefully that's a little background, and we don't have to rush this by any means, but it's kind of just a conversation of what scale of improvement is good enough, I think, is the discussion that started to happen with the previous committee members that were, you know, Brian, this is for you too, since you're newer to the board as well.
Madam Chair,
Go for it.
I think it would be helpful to send it to all of us, just to show us what the old score, and maybe if you've done 1 or 2, I think that would be good for all of us, just to see what the change is, how it will impact it. And then could I ask for one more favor? Obviously, the legislature's in session, and so there could be possible changes to the Renaissance Zone. And so if you could let us know, just kind of give us an update. And then on top of that, if there's an issue where you're concerned that it's going to negatively impact, then contact us and we can hopefully contact people to help us. And so if you don't mind, I apologize for adding more things to your list, but
No, absolutely.
That was on their list today.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, we can do a kind of like a historic perspective from when we started to this interim period, and then to what do we want future, and do a little bit of assessment that way.
I was here back in the Roger Gilbertson days and Swantek and so many others. So this scoring has been a tool, not a requirement, and something that was developed along the line just to try to help the committee and to have a guideline. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those have to change. So thank you for what you're going to do to create some history there. And I believe you did have an update too on legislative. So,
Yep, so a couple quick things.
that's
We have no updates. There have been no bills introduced that relate specifically to the Renaissance Zone. That doesn't mean things couldn't change and something gets amended to add something. But as of right now, there's nothing, no bills related to the Renaissance Zone. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in December, the 2024 Renaissance Zone Development Plan was approved, thanks to all your work on that, and everyone has a copy of that up in front of you today, so thank you.
any other comments on memorandum that was sent out on some of the scoring. Brian and Dean, you were there yesterday at the meeting. Do you feel this ties in well with that?
Yeah, I agree.
As far as, okay.
And then maybe for those that were not able to be there yesterday, as a quick update, so the Renaissance Zone Authority and the Economic Development Incentives Committee, along with the FMEDC, we've asked them to be on a focus group related to incentives and as it relates to the Land Development Code update. And so we're just kicking off our discussions. But really, I think to summarize, and Chair, you're welcome to summarize these comments too, but really, if I were to summarize a few of the things we heard, we're also doing many other focus groups today. In a few minutes, we'll be meeting with builders and developers and applicants and architects and engineers later today. And we had a joint meeting with the Planning and City Commission yesterday. And really, the discussion is related to incentives of how do we define public benefit and how does that get used integratedly into an analysis of when we're talking about maybe a community with limited resources and limited land. And then again, this is all like citywide, not just downtown, but with your work and understanding of how the Renaissance Zone works, that's really being lifted up as a good example of how you can get definitive in policies and geographies and elements related to incentives.
Okay, good.
Madam Chair, maybe just to add on Nicole's comment from the county commission perspective, I did send a note to the Economic Development Corporation leaders at the city, Fargo, West Fargo, and Castleton. Depending on where the legislature ends up with property tax reform and caps, recognizing that Cass County government's funded by 100% property tax. Cities are generally a blend of fees and other income. Cass County decisions will be different in the future if we're limited to a 3% cap on what incentives we approve. Because right now we're projecting a deficit if it stands at 3%, and we need the funds to be able to manage our budget, and provide the resources, and particularly to public safety. So more to come on that, but we'll see what Sinai brings to us as far as decisions in Bismarck.
Thank you, and keep us updated on that, please. It's very important to everyone. There was a group that met quite some time ago, and a group of homes in Fargo had been identified as nearing the blight removal. So I think some of this is really tying in and helping in that aspect also. So keep up the good work. Any other items to come before the committee today? If none, our next meeting is March 26th. Does it look like we have, at this point, that we have any projects in the works?
I'm not aware of any applications, or don't anticipate any at this point.
I'm sure some people might be traveling, so we might have a couple Zoom calls there. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.